Hello, and welcome to the Freedom Challenge online podcast. Here at the Freedom Challenge, we strive to do good by helping enslaved women and children to do more than you ever thought physically possible, and to do it together by connecting women with a heart for a hurting world. We hope you enjoy your time being informed and encouraged with host Tracy Daugherty and our amazing guests. So let's get ready and join Tracy for this week's episode.
Welcome back to the Freedom Challenge online podcast. This is your host and the director of the Freedom Challenge, Tracy Daugherty. And today I have a co-host,
Ruth Willett, the prayer coordinator.
Love this lady. She is a colleague, a friend, a freedom sister. And today we get to celebrate the impact of this year, 2025.
Today, we are here to bring you into some of the impact of our work, celebrating where God is working and changing the lives of the one and the many.
Yes, we're going to talk about how we approach the ministry, the projects, the frontline stories of women and children that are impacted by the work that collectively all of us do. And you know, Ruth, we are mobilizing through going, which is women actually going on challenges, going on mission trips. We're mobilizing through prayer, which is a huge part of what we do. And we're also mobilizing by raising funds and giving. So that whole place of generosity. So oftentimes you and I both know people just want to know, like, does my work matter? And if it does, where is it actually going? Like, is there a destination? And it's really why we love to take women to the places that we serve. I know last year we went to Thailand. We're going there again. And throughout the year, we went to Moldova. And throughout the years, we've been able to see in person. But what we're looking for eventually, the end goal, what is it that those funds, this prayer, this going is moving towards? So the first part of that is really just prevention. We are huge fans of prevention.
Huge.
Yeah, huge. Because, you know, if you think about if we can reach someone before they actually need to be rescued, what a celebration that is. So prevention is very important to us. It's breaking the cycles of poverty. It's interrupting places where there could be exploitation. It's understanding what those vulnerabilities are and moving toward them. So we're going to talk more about that in a minute. We also give those funds toward development. So that would be economic empowerment, the development of the whole woman. What are the skills? What are the things that could be cultivated in her or in that child that could set them up for long-term flourishing? But not just long-term flourishing, but generational flourishing. So we care deeply about development. And then this rescue and restoration. Oftentimes we're thinking about rescue, 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 but rescue and restoration are together. There are people who their freedoms have been taken, removed, restricted, and we want to come and be a part of our small part in the world of seeing the empowerment of those rescues, but even more is the restoration process, which is long and arduous. So all that to say, all of this mobilizing of women is going directly toward that framework, that approach.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, we've broken it down, but they also all just tie together so beautifully, don't they? Like, I know with a lot of the women that are working in the area of rescue, no one stays unless they're developed, because we need to give them another option and a good option. And that's what development does. So all together, it's just so important.
Yeah. And really understanding that the funds, the prayers, the effort are going toward not a statistic, because we know the statistics in human trafficking or those vulnerable to human trafficking are astounding. They're overwhelming, but toward the one, which you love to say. It's that one, and it's really the heart of God. So when we tell these stories, you're going to notice today that some will have new names, Some will seem a little broad. And of course, many we won't tell at all because they are in places where it would be dangerous to tell their story. So we've picked out some of the highlights that we've seen this year that we want to celebrate and just name the impact. So let's start with prevention. And it's important to note that 55% currently of our fundraising goes directly to prevention. And that's over a half. And it's over half on purpose because we really believe this is some of the most fertile soil to create God activities, movement, and, be a representation of who Christ is in these places.
And the thing about prevention is we might actually never fully know what we've done. And that's actually the goal. Like, we're not going to be able to tell you the stories because hopefully the stories have never happened, because we told them and we educated them and resourced them in a way that their vulnerabilities were never able to be exploited.
Isn't that a fun thought? Isn't that a fun thought? Like, when you just think about eternity, will tell those stories and will connect those involved in those stories in such a meaningful way. I often ponder that. What does that look like? Here on earth, we don't get to know. But in eternity, we get to see the fruitful, just how that intersected. That is a compelling thought. Well, I want to talk a little bit about one particular country and some really good work. And again, there's 55% of our funding is going to prevention. And I'm just pulling out one. You're going to talk a little bit about another, but there's so many more. This is not because it's our favorite, but I feel like all of them are my favorite. But it's because there's just really some good things to discuss here. So the Philippines, they have, I don't want to say altogether, but one of the primary vulnerabilities represented in the Philippines is poverty, like deep poverty. Over 50% of this country would be in a seriously dangerous level of poverty and depression. And that just really brings about so many vulnerabilities. One being food scarcity, thinking about that. Medical, like being able to actually get medical attention needed. And those things become vulnerabilities in the societies where that is prevalent, and really is changing a whole mindset toward what opportunities may be available, because some of those opportunities aren't even present. So when we talk about prevention, we're talking about things like basic education. We're talking about things like basic needs met. And the leader in Philippines right now is such a fabulous man. I was able to meet him in Malaysia. His name is Philip. He is a young, wonderful young father, great dad. I feel so much hope in his heart to bring Christ's love in all forms to the country that he is leading in. And he is a national leader. So he is a Filipino man leading in that context. And one of the ministries that we've been a part of as long as I've been here, and I believe even from the beginning, is called, it's a scholars program. So they're called the Scholars. And essentially, OM in the Philippines has a real pulse on who are the vulnerable children, the most vulnerable in these societies. They bring them in. Many of them are street kids, just living on the street in community with other children, or children that there is a lack of resourcing or even oversight from parents. And they bring them in, and there's a whole process of literacy, of budgeting, learning proper skills. They give them funds, and they have to learn to live and document those funds. There is learning English as a second language, and then just moving on into all of these places of education, and which sets them up for a lifetime of seeing the opportunities, and the opportunity not being survival, sex, or selling themselves. One example of that is Freedom Challenge has been there quite a few times now, but there was one young man who is now in leadership, who actually described what it was like because of food vulnerability or the need to care for his family in such an honor society where he actually had to sell himself in order to provide for his family. And this program actually intervened early on and gave him the opportunity to not only see the other ways to go about this, but moved all the way through until he was in a place of going to university and then giving back to the program. So there's a beautiful full circle in all of this that we can see, not just prevention, but the development, which you spoke to as well. And in most of these programs, there is some form of invitation to those that are a part to partake of understanding more about scripture so that they in turn have that opportunity to respond and walk toward Jesus or have questions about this Jesus who came in a body and lived on the earth. And what did that mean for me? And how do I understand that? So that's really beautiful because it's this holistic picture that's caring for the person in the areas that the young person, the child, was neglected and not cared for at all. Those representatives are really bringing that. It seems so simple, but it is so beautiful.
Yeah. So we're telling stories. And as you say that about the embodiment of just being the hands and feet of Jesus, I'm going to read some stats for those of you who like numbers, but one of the statistics was how we are introducing the people that we work with to who Jesus is. And we get to be him here on earth. We get to be his love. We get to be his hands and feet. And that's one of the beautiful things about the stories and the statistics is we get to introduce Jesus. But for those who like numbers, in 2025, in this scholar program that Tracy's talking about, 70 children were in tutorial classes. There was 20 scholars and 37 mothers who were in adult literacy classes. So that is over 100 lives changed. And we all know that when you educate a mother, you're changing way more than one life. So
That's so
many
true.
lives
Yeah,
changed.
that's
And
right.
so let's just pause for a minute and pray for our prevention projects. We don't need to know them all by name, although there's lots of great information on our website. But just thank you, God, thank you, Dad, for just the example of getting to be Jesus' hands and feet, whether it's the workers like Philip in the Philippines, or whether it's us here telling the stories, or the ladies fundraising and raising awareness, that just the role and the part that all of this plays in this work, or 20 years later, getting to see the fruit of some simple steps. We just want to say, Lord, will you equip the work on the fields? Will you equip and strengthen the workers? Will you give them the wisdom to know what to say yes to and what to say no to, when I'm sure there is so much for them to do that sometimes they may not know where to start. Will you know where to start? And we know that. So we just want to thank you for the 100 plus 150 who were impacted in this one small project, and we know that there has been many more, and we just ask that you would keep moving, that you would keep sending workers, sending funds, keep rescuing by the simple act of prevention. So thank you, and just thank you. Amen.
Thank you. You know, something I thought about when you were praying, and I was agreeing with you as you prayed, is scarcity and abundance, and the mindset, and really when there is scarcity, how we really lock down. And then when God shifts our mind and we go, oh, abundance, there's more ideas and opportunity than I had known about. And how abundance is really attached to love, which is a renewable resource. So when we think about scarcity, it's this idea that all the resources are used up. There is no more creativity. There is no more love. And usually where there's an absence of love, there is neglect. There is all of these scarce, impoverished mindsets. But sometimes it's just a shift into the abundance and the renewable resource of love, God's love, the love through his people, the love through these workers, the love through us praying and doing, where we can see the renewable resource of love and how it's showing up in such a way that's abundant, even when someone's waiting and saving their money for a couch. There's still an abundance of, I'm going to get there.
The renewable resource of love. I love that phrase. But even just talking about that scarcity and abundance, it's one of the many just awful things about survival and what the enemy keeps trying to steal, whether it's what we're talking about around the world or whether it's even in our lives, where he just kind of traps us with that scarcity mindset and steals the hope.
Yes. There's no other options is what we hear. There's no other options.
Survival, like you say, it just locks you down, and then it's hard to see. And it's true for all of us. So I would just, this is off topic, but I interject just a little bit to you listeners now, that I feel like we're in a season where God's inviting us to dream. He's for sure inviting me to dream. I'm actually not finding it that easy. And it's one of those things that's great to challenge. If we find something hard, to be like, ooh, where is there scarcity in me that you want to address? Because God loves to run after the one being us as well. So as we move on to develop, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, that's good. And what I love about the develop piece, which is 29% of our funds go toward development, as we're talking about this, part of the development is possibly having the mindset where we begin to see opportunity, right? So love in our midst lifts our heads to say, I'm worth being invested in, and I'm going to invest in myself, and I'm open to love. Because again, the scarcity mindset locks us into a place of going, I can't see anything but right here. And the development lifts up to say, oh, I never even knew these things were here. And that's why this is so important, because whether it's an opportunity to have proper housing, and you have been living couch to couch or on the streets or in brothels or whatever that may have been, that development of mindset of, I have some choices, maybe not the broadest of choices, but there are some. And I maybe even have opportunities to begin to see that my hands can do something that causes flourishing in the world, instead of just giving what is not others to take, or someone taking what is theirs not to take, which would be trafficking, right? Because essentially, when we think about, and we'll talk more about the vulnerabilities of trafficking, but what has been stymied or stopped or taken or siphoned or whatever we want to say, or impeded, any of those words, take your pick, is the human's ability to say, I can think freely, I can feel what's mine, and I can choose. And there's opportunities, I see them. And that is really why human trafficking is so inhumane, unjust, because it's going after the very thing that God put in the center of his creation, humans. And it's saying, you don't have that. So that's why I love this development piece, because it really is creating the ability to maybe expand more largely the development of opportunities that exist to women and children who have not had that. So we'll talk a little bit about a project that is dear to both of our hearts. We've been there multiple times, Freedom Challenge, really actually quite a few times. Two women of ours, two women of the Freedom Challenge went there even this year. And that is in Greece. And this is really, these three projects are very much targeting survivors who were either in trafficking or incredibly entangled in that life for long periods of time, or even their dependents are. So this is a very complex situation in Greece that has its history of its own, rooted in, years ago, and the refugees coming in and getting stuck in this whole minutia of geopolitical situations. We can't get into that. But these 3 projects, one is called the House of Damaris, which is a program. It's a program that has levels to it that bring in, some of them are just women, some of them are women with their children who really have been in the clutches of oppression and human trafficking. And so this has a whole beautiful process. There is an exposure to who Christ is with invitations. There is an opportunity for their children to be cared for. So there's really a long-term care piece here. I myself have been there several times, have spent time, and have even participated in the recovery conversations with the women, being a part of it in community with them. Such a powerful program. The other program is Threads of Hope. This is a nonprofit that is offering work to women who have successfully escaped and have a level of beginning restoration. It's part of that restoration process, to give them the opportunity to creatively learn how to make goods that are, high quality. Ruth, you have seen some of the products that come from here.
Yeah.
I would say you can order them online even, and they are beautiful. And really, this is opening those opportunities for development. I mean, you think about women being able to see what they creatively made with their
Mm-hmm.
something that someone would want to buy.
Yeah.
I have a bag right over here that I had my books in just the other day.
I think this is...
There it is. Yes, it's so true. And then another one, Eknoia, which means anew. This is a nonprofit, again, developing organization that are providing jobs, employment, and training. One in cleaning and dignified work, well-paid work. Another one in a used bookstore, which I myself have been to before it was created, after it's created, and it is a success. Women are learning to do IT, websites, book management, organizational skills, all of those things. And all 3 of these development projects are hitting it out of the park.
Yeah, because one of the things that project is doing as well is it's giving them a safe place to learn the skills that they've been taught, is like almost like a stepping stone to go into other work, isn't it? If I understand that correctly.
Yes. And also safety. And so this is not a project that's known, those women over there are coming out of trafficking. This is really providing opportunity, not in the shadow of the life that they're stepping out of, which is beautiful. So there really is true development. And a few years ago, a team of us went to the House of Damaris. We were there over Easter, and it was so beautiful. We shared Easter dinner, this wonderful Greek Orthodox, when we were there, Easter. And we shared a meal. We did that in community and fellowship, not as we're here to help you, but here as part of a sisterhood that wants to, learn and grow from one another. And it was all of that and more. It was so beautiful. We also, one thing that I remember back from being there is the choice. Women were often given a choice to participate in extracurricular activities. It was not put upon them. And in that choice was getting there, being a part of it, and not being questioned if they weren't. So it's just really, again, experimenting with, I can say yes, I can say no, and developing that muscle. That was pretty special as well.
One of the stories that I heard about this project this year when I was reading, Elaine, our lovely colleague, sends us lots of stories and emails just to help us, keep our hearts connected when sometimes you're just doing, the admin work. And I remember reading this story, and they don't all have the same impact, but this one just landed, and I was like, I love this. And it was, let's call her Nadia. We're, of course, changing the names for of these ladies, but she was a young woman. She was trafficked as a minor already. Just, that's tragic. She's from a Middle Eastern country, and at the age of 18, she was referred to our work, the House of Damaris. And so she's an unaccompanied minor, has no community, you're talking about safety, and part of that's community, right? And it's not just a place to lay your head, it's a place to build community. And she got that. She came and they helped her. She worked for 2 years to receive her high school diploma. And in that 2 years is the healing, the training, the encouragement, like, you don't have to give up, you can do this, all the things, and all the adjustments, even language, right? All the things that she's battling just to get this. But she got moving towards getting her life back in order. She got her high school diploma, and she even found some work on a Greek island for the summer. And what I loved about this was the staff came alongside her and they were like, okay, this is great. Will you let us be here for you and provide support and safety? So they found out all about the job. They went and made sure that it was not like a trafficking scam, or that what she was being offered was legit. They took her there, helped her get there, and they were like, you are welcome back. You have your place with us. Like, basically what we're supposed to do for people. Just make sure they're okay, look after them. And people who are, and we're going to talk about this later, but just because you're rescued doesn't mean you're not still prone, you're not still like vulnerable to being, and so aware that there's still a vulnerability that exists, and that there is a vulnerability to these jobs that are being offered on these remote islands. They just took hand of that with her permission and just looked out for her. And she would, let me see, I don't want to muck this up, so let me see how it ended. So they made sure she had safe accommodation and employment there, and she signed her contract to come back to Damaris and be in the third phase, which is the transitional housing apartment. So that's what she's doing now. And she found out that she really is part of a community that hasn't just taken her in, but they go the extra mile. They care for her. She can turn to them.
Yes, it's all of that. And having been physically in each one of those homes, seeing the beautiful rooms, the sitting rooms, the communal kitchens, the gardens, where that therapeutic nature of being able to be in nature for these women, and also sitting in one of their 12 steps where we were invited to participate in this 12 step, not just observe. And so we were bringing the women there were bringing all of us collectively together where our struggles were intersecting and finding that commonality. And what I remember at the time, I had experienced a pretty great loss. And I remember sharing that as part of this 12-step conversation in one of the homes. And two of the girls got up and came over and put their hands on me and prayed over me. And, these were women who have gone through horrific things. And together we were just being sisters, community, and supporting one another. And so what I love about that house is how much it feels and is that. And I can imagine, community is a building block of how God made us. We were invited into the community that was already established through the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So when we're invited in that, there's something that's really reciprocal. Like, it's powerful when we humans are moving and operating. There's so much richness in that development of our human experience. It's essential. While clearly we love Greece, let's maybe just bring our development projects and ministry before the Lord. Do you want me to do that, or you want to do it?
Yeah, no, you do it.
Okay. So, Lord, you heard us talk about Greece, and there are many other ministries, meaningful works that we have been able to participate in this year. But what we ask is that you would be developing and expanding the mindset of every woman and child present to these projects, that they would begin to see their value, their contribution, that they would begin to feel and experience the community that not only comes from relationship with you, but from the people who have surrounded them and the benefit of that mutuality. So we pray specifically for House of Damaris, for Eknoia, and for Threads of Hope, that there would be an exponential flourishing, not just in number, but in depth of work. And we bless this and all of the development projects that we have supported this year in the Freedom Challenge. In Jesus' name.
Yeah. I think when I was talking about it, I did say our work, but you're entirely right. Work that we have the privilege of supporting. Yeah. So we highlighted a few things there while we were talking that really are what makes people vulnerable.
Yeah. And just a pause here to bring some more insight or education to think about in the context of other parts of the world, but also in the world that we live in the US or Canada or wherever you may be listening to that primarily. Our audience is women in the US, but if you're listening somewhere else, just think about your context. But what makes a person vulnerable? And really, what is the insidiousness of human trafficking, which is the exploitation of that vulnerability, which is so sinister.
Yeah, I can't even wrap my brain around it, actually.
To actually say, there's a weakness.
Yeah.
There's no community there. No one's looking after that person. Let's exploit that with trickery, coercion, force.
And we've seen that in our work. I remember when you went to one of the countries in Asia that I don't know whether we can say the name or not, so I won't. But there's a refugee camp, and there was people going missing from the refugee camp because they were exploiting the vulnerability of the chaos.
Yes, that's right. And using coercion, which, or force, fraud, these kinds of manipulative based offers that are nothing. And so when we think about vulnerabilities, what would make someone vulnerable? A language barrier. Yeah. So anywhere that you see a language that is unknown in a place, like there's just a barrier, like there is vulnerability. So every context you can put that, that's huge. And that is also why often people are taken from their, place of birth and brought to another part of the world, because it really exasperates the inability to communicate properly. And that becomes a vulnerability. Being outside of your culture, so you don't know the geography. Sometimes people are destabilized because they're outside of their culture and their geography, and they don't even know where they're at on a map. So that is a vulnerability. The lack of education, really highlights like how someone would be tricked into thinking that this opportunity was a good thing when in fact it was not, healthy, happy, not in their benefit. Desperate for another life. Like, I just can't find what I need here. I need to go somewhere else and someone's offering something to me. That happens everywhere. And so trauma, so pre-existing trauma, things that have happened early, those all become not having community. And there's so many more. Poverty, lack of, food security, lack of food, lack of shelter.
And I think just, why are we talking about this? Like, for me, some of the reasons are helping to hold a heart of compassion, because I've read some of the stories that are sent our way and I'm like, why did they make that choice? And then you're like, oh, trauma made the choice, if it even was a choice.
Yes.
And how to pray. Like, we're reading things that we maybe are struggling to compute, or like human trafficking in general. It's an issue that's quite hard to be like, what do we do with this? How do we hold this? And breaking it down just a little bit and being like, when I am looking at this and deciding to face it, a small part of it is just to hold it with compassion and to hold it and go, I don't need, maybe I'm not going to be the person changing laws. I'm maybe not going to be the person leading a nation to freedom, but I can just choose to face it. I can choose to talk about it. I can choose to look up an organization in my area. I can choose to do a freedom challenge. I can hold something as simple as, here's some things, exploitation of vulnerability. It helps me pray for the people that are doing it. It makes me angry. That anger's okay. Give it to God, wrestle it out. The people who are exploiting the vulnerability, my brain can't actually comprehend it.
Yeah.
But it is happening. So let's just pause and pray for that for a minute. Like, God, unfortunately, we live in a world where vulnerability and trauma and evil and human trafficking exist. And we just want to place all of these names in your hands. We want to place them below your name, the name above all names. Jesus, we were told in Exodus that you came as Yahweh and you rescued, and you've done it before and you can do it again. And we don't actually often know how to look at this issue, but thank you for the bravery of the listeners listening to this, of the Freedom Sisters who do choose to just glance at this and raise awareness and raise funds, and the workers on the fields, who knows what they're seeing day in and day out. And I just want to pause here and thank you for the bravery of the people who are going, we were made for more. We were made to be in community. We were made for that love that Tracy was just talking about earlier, not made to exploit the vulnerable. And we ask that you would come and you would teach us, even in our lives, how to not do that, how to live with honor and live with love and live with compassion. And so we just remember who you are. You are the name above all names, and we are so grateful. You are El Roy, the God who sees, and Abba, our dad. So we just ask you to move, because we know that only you can make this a world where we're seeing beauty, we're seeing kindness, we're seeing love and compassion. And I thank you for the heart that you have for your kids. Amen.
Thank you, Ruth, for praying. But it's important to talk about what makes a person vulnerable as we move into these last focuses, which are rescue and restoration. 16% of our funds go there. And you're going to speak a little bit to that. It's easy for us, and you alluded to this, in our worldview that has the privilege of many choices. Most of us have this privilege to begin to, I think it's a form of dehumanizing so that we can actually hold this reality, to begin to judge and say, well, why can't you just, there's a better choice, when often the better choice is the choice between two really horrific exploitations, in trauma.
I've heard people say, and I've maybe even said myself, there's always a choice.
Yes.
Actually, no, sometimes it's a decision, but not a choice.
Yeah.
Like you have something you need to make.
Yeah.
But it's a lose-lose.
Yeah. And outside of our control, which we're going to talk about some of the stories from that 16% of those funds that have gone to operation mobilization projects that we support that, are activating rescue and restoration. But to set that up, one of the activities that we did at the Adirondack Challenge a few months ago, we had some guests that were with us. They were local to California ministry, or actually organization that is survivor led. And one of the survivors and the director took us through an activity that helped us understand how choice is a privilege, and really helped pull all judgment out of the plight of those that are walking into just whatever it takes to live. So it started out in the large group. A story was read that was based on facts from other survivors. The story was read, and the group needed to choose between two things. And both of them were terrible ideas, but they were the only choices. And then the room broke into two. Then they would read to the one group, here is what happens next. Do you go on the street, or you stay where you're at? If you stay where you're at, you are subject to more abuse. If you go on the street, you're vulnerable. And so the room would make more choices, both bad choices. And this went on and on and on into going into a nonprofit that would help you, into relapsing back into the life. And all of the women were moving in and out of these terrible choices, but the only ones that presented themselves.
Yeah.
And within an existing trauma, you have to make this decision now. Are you running or are you staying?
Just making the decision about yourself.
Yes.
There's other people involved.
Yes. Are you going to stay there, or are you going to leave? If you leave, this individual is going to abuse your sister. If if you stay there, you're going to endure that. Are you going to start drugs to numb the pain of this experience, or are you going to? And I remember
you got out and you were like, oh, I got rescued. And then you were still so vulnerable that you were,
you got out, and then the only job opportunity was $15 an hour, and you can't live on $15 an hour with no support, no family, and no housing. So on. And there's no community to bolster you up because you don't have community. So it was in and out of all these things. And I remember at one point, Ruth, there were a few women that were so exasperated. They're like, I don't like these opportunities. I have other choices. Like, I'm going to do this.
Well, what's the point in even doing it? Yeah. And I was sobbing in the back.
But it was so true.
Yeah.
To how I think that there was not one woman in that experience who will continue to move forward in a judgment of that was a bad decision, but understanding the vulnerabilities and what it looks like when we're at rescue and restoration. Choice is a privilege.
And this is the very reason why rescue and restoration is 16% of our funds. That's what it went to this year, but prevention is 55%, because when you reach this point, you've walked into multiple traumatic situations. Like we said, even if you're rescued, it's not guaranteed, and it's a long road. It's a long road to that point of maybe thriving and moving and continuing into full healing. And so we really just hope that they never get to this point. And that's why over and over and over again, we're asking you not only to fundraise for the projects, but to speak up and to raise awareness, because I don't know, but we're not just trying to rescue, we're trying to stop. We're trying to prevent. We're trying to
disrupt.
Good word.
Yeah. And we had a few of our Freedom Sisters just got back from Ghana, and they brought back some remarkable frontline work of rescue and restoration. Long, arduous work. This is long, hanging in their work.
Yeah, I'm going to read because this is a fairly new project, and I definitely don't have this memorized. But the project itself started the Safe House, so it focuses obviously on rescuing the vulnerable and oppressed and providing them with a safe space. But the Safe House initially started because 12 women were rescued, and we were asked if we would give them a place to stay. So they started a skills training and safe house for them. It's now a refuge for women to come to learn skills and go home. And our goal is that when they leave, they can be independent and not forced into like a really early marriage or other vulnerable circumstances. So we could tell you story after story, but I'm going to quickly highlight four. So there's a young 16-year-old, let's call her Tanika. She was left to wander the village and look after herself because while her family were preparing to marry her off because they couldn't afford her. Then there was Naja, who at 14 was brought out of school because the family wanted to use the little resources they had to advance their sons. Then there's Carrie, whose family gave up on her because she was constantly sick. And not only did they not have the resources for that, but that's a bad omen. They were looked at like they were cursed. So they abandoned their kid. And lastly, Patty, who was being dedicated to the temple priests and was rescued and is now being taken care of and educated. So only one of those was full on being trafficked, but they were all in terrible, vulnerable situations, and they all got help that they received from the safe house. And their goal, when it's entirely possible, is that they receive, let me just read it. They're being educated and taught a skill, and the hope is that in 2 years they can be reintegrated back into the community and the family, but they're no longer vulnerable. So that's a mixture of rescue and prevention, which is kind of beautiful.
With all of the pieces of, like, when you think about restoration, I mean, restoration is a lifetime project for all of us. But in terms of restoring back to being able to function and not be in a traumatic situation or a place where your ability to think, feel and choose has been removed from you. So that restoration process of helping these girls have the constitution, the wherewithal, and the understanding of who they are and how they might walk more, strongly in the world. And that the thing that's beautiful about this, and you've alluded to it a couple of times, is how the one or the two or the woman or the mom changes and impacts the community and those around her by her transformation.
And I was involved in work many years ago where, talking of like the society viewing you as you're cursed. If you had a disability of any sort, it was thought that it was because you had done something wrong. You read in the Bible, like, who sinned for this to happen, God? And like that mentality of the family have done something wrong, that's why this child has been born with a disability. And we actually read about a work, but there was a project in Zambia where this is, what they were living with, that a disability was thought to be a curse. And they have worked, it's the Bethsaida Project, and they've worked with individuals with disabilities, as simple as like they were, I know in the work that I was involved in the past, the kid would just be in the corner on the floor, not, even brought to sit at the table. And then, the team would work with them and be like, we can do physical therapy with your kid. They can actually sit at the table with you. And so they go from not even engaging with family to then getting to go to school and being in school with other. And this is what's happened in Zambia recently. They got to go to school. And what happened is they actually had a race. Let me read this. Rather than being shunned and locked indoors, there was a race in central downtown where the police escorted 500 people in wheelchairs. So, and I say that just to say we're changing lives.
Yes.
And lives are changing communities.
Yes. And to name disabilities and age also as vulnerabilities. Very young,
Yeah.
very old, and any kind of disability is another vulnerability that can be exploited, and that is tragic. So, back rolling that up into that conversation, and communities, a whole community transformation. I like to think about it like this. It's in the lack of community that a life is actually deformed. It's in the life of community, in God, in others, that a life is transformed. It's not unto itself. It is what humans do to each other or for each other. And so that's why us leaning in and engaging is so huge. And I want to highlight two of the opportunities that we've had, stateside. Sometimes people are like, what does Freedom Challenge do? We know you do international things. We align with already 40 projects that are operation mobilization projects that Freedom Challenge is supporting, again, that have to do with prevention, development, rescue, restoration.
Yeah.
But we are contributing by praying, by participating, by fundraising. But now, throughout the last couple of years, we have been partnering with local organizations that make sense and that God has divinely appointed. And two of those in 2025 was the Dream Center New York City. This is a relationship, very special relationship that God orchestrated. And they are in the center of that city, working with refugees, working with vulnerable women and children. And when we had our NYC challenge, Ruth, you were there. Tell us what happened the night before. We prayed through this entire city. We walked through this entire city. We raised funds, got to gift some of it to Dream Center New York. But we did what on Friday night?
We had an outreach where, so they, every month, if I'm remembering correctly, they have the refugees come and they get to, basics like diapers, food for the family. But sometimes there's luxuries like skincare products are donated or bagged. And so we're working with them again this year when we do a New York challenge.
In September. And really affirming the dignity of that unit. That is very vulnerable.
Yeah.
A very vulnerable population going toward being with understanding how exploitation might be, might happen. And that's what I love about Dream Center, because they're boots on the ground, observing, knowing, having relationship. And we got to partner with them. Another partnership this year was with the I-5 Freedom Network. I mentioned that they were a part of the Adirondack Challenge, which was remarkable, a survivor-led journey in cohorts and education. And we did a educational video, Human Trafficking 101 with them, and that will be available next year. But we also did fundraising for the translation of their self-designed life curriculum that is for survivors, by survivors. It's beautiful work, and we got to contribute back to that work. And we will also be partnering with them again in 2026 with a local challenge in their neck of the woods. So we are impacting communities in our own backyard, ladies, and there's much to celebrate about that. Ruth, we could go on, but we actually have to close because we just, it's time to wrap this puppy up.
You've heard us share just some of the stories. And this, ladies, is when you all work hard to raise funds, and I know it's hard, and to talk about this and feel uncomfortable doing it. This is why. Your funds have gone to these stories. Like, we're telling you stories from 2025. So what you've raised this year, these projects were sent funds to help continue to do the work. And don't you just love how God is a story God? I love that about God. Like, you hear me say all the time, he sees the one, he runs after the one. And this is a part of how we're doing that with him. So and I know Tracy too, but I'll let her speak for herself. I want to say thank you to those of you who worked hard in 2025, because this is why we're doing it. This is a part of it. And all those for Freedom Challenge has been going for 13 years now. So for some of you who are listening from way back when, thank you. You're making an impact. And we know that it's cost you. And I want to honor that and say, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a picture of what we talked about earlier. Love is a renewable resource. It keeps renewing itself, and there's never a shortage of it. And so what I see in the women who have participated year over year is the belief that that love is a renewable resource and that God will provide enough to keep going, to keep doing, to be activated, to have our hearts sparked toward his work. And always, I like to say this, like God's agenda is always this population, the vulnerable, the widow, the orphan, those in trouble, those oppressed by society and marginalized. His agenda is always centered in the middle of that. So we are always winning when we're walking toward that kind of pain, even when we can't solve it. Yeah. And that really is the lesson for us, to say, to walk towards something that we cannot fix, but to walk toward it with an open heart and giving what we can is so beautiful. And it's so multipliable, right? It's the 2 fishes, all I got. And then it's enough to feed what's needed in that season.
But on that note, quickly, you know, we're honoring you ladies who've taken part. And I know that this cost you, you know, I was talking to a friend about it, and she's done a lot of challenges and she's paid for that herself because, you know, the fundraising is not to do the challenge. The fundraising is for the work on the field. And it's been costly for her as well as amazing. But there's also people hopefully on here listening who you haven't done a challenge, but you've given to the work. And Tracy, one of the verses that you often speak, and I'll probably butcher it, but is like, when you give to the poor, you lend to God. And like, this really is his agenda. And just we're doing a good thing here.
That's right. And those that prayed. Let's not minimize that. Like the engine of prayer that surrounds the darkness of this issue and stuns the enemy into inactivity. So that's also something so beautiful. Man, I love ya. I'm so glad I get to see you all the time. And all of you Freedom Sisters, all of you that prayed, all of you that gave, all of you that thought about us, listen to these podcasts all year long. So, so grateful. All of you who are working tirelessly front lines in the ministries that we mentioned, these Operation Mobilization ministries, we are so grateful for you. It's an honor to partner and support you in the work that God is doing. And I want to encourage you to be on the lookout, because there's new opportunities to challenge yourself, to pray intentionally, to give generously. And until next time, let's continue to do good, helping enslaved women and children do more than you ever thought physically possible, and do it together, connecting with women who have a heart for a hurting world. God bless.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Freedom Challenge online podcast. If you liked what you heard, join the fight to set women and children on a pathway to freedom across the globe. We are a proud ministry of Operation Mobilization USA and encourage you to learn more at thefreedomchallenge.com and omusa.org for how you can get involved. Follow us on Facebook, on Instagram at the FCUSA, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to let us know what you think. We'll see you next time.